Is there a future for MMOs or are they a thing of the past? I think that there is a future for them, but the best way to explain what I think the future is going to look like is to start in the past and work my way towards the present and then the future. So originally, MMOs started as a way to originally, they were kind of MUDs, like text-based games where it was basically playing a tabletop RPG on the computer. So it was a step up from, or a linear step uh, from paper RPGs, uh, where you could go through predetermined adventures, but have some amount of player agency. And then they had MUDs, like multi-user dungeons, where you could go on a text um, adventure with your friends on a local, uh, like a landline, or maybe just dial up to like a local BBS or something. And they were small scale, sort of, I don't know, the spirit of them was kind of a shared experience, just spending time with a couple of people doing something you enjoy, and that's kind of the spirit that went forward, like just a sense of community and shared interest. And then as time went by and computer graphics were improving. I mean, to be fair, MMOs have some of the worst graphics, even to this day, because they need to be able to appeal to a broader audience. I think it was like Todd Howard that said this, but I'm not sure. Uh, if you design for a system everybody has, then you should design for a table, right? Because nobody has the same computer setup, like, so it's hard to kind of find like the right spot for graphics. So they kind of err on the side of caution with that. And you know, and to be fair, I've had systems that have struggled to run games when they were first released. That I kind of I can't even imagine that now. Um, when I first played Lord of the Rings online, I had to turn the shadows off. Like it was, it was rough out there. Anyway, so when there first started being like a 3D representation of graphics, we're talking EverQuest and old school RuneScape, but it was just RuneScape then, and other ones at the time that aren't coming to mind at the moment, but you know them when you see them, right? I'm sorry. Um, so at the time, they were basically like glorified chat rooms. Like the graphics were rudimentary, the combat was rudimentary, the quest givers were like, um, kind of basically like a signpost where they stood in one spot and they had little text dialogues, but it got the job done, right? It was a 3D representation of like the paper RPG, and you got in, and it was exciting to be able to like communicate with friends, especially over a greater distance than like the chords would allow you to. Um, and that was like novel and interesting, and a lot of people got into them just for the sake of being able to play with friends because um that was a big thing at the time. So I think the point where MMOs kind of split off really um was um was like probably like the MMO boom of like 2007, 2008, somewhere around there. Um so World of Warcraft had unprecedented success. There were many other games like they were starting around the same time. Two that I played was Star Wars Galaxy and EverQuest 2. And there was others that were still a very popular. What Ultima, was that around at the same time? What did you play when Warcraft came out? If you were playing one then, I'm curious. Um, but Warcraft's success um basically like turned a lot of studios' expectations a little unrealistically because, at the time, games were getting up to 100,000 players, which was really impressive because you were fighting with spotty internet, and the monthly fee was a lot of money. If you deflate it back to what it was worth at the time. The technical limitations. Not everybody had a system that could run it. And and besides that, not everybody was online. Not everybody had a computer in their home, let alone like a smartphone or a tablet or more portable devices that people have now. So there was a really steep learning curve to even connect to an MMO, to even understand it. So there was a fairly homogenous player base, right? For the most part, before the audience broadened, it was people who um, came to it from the perspective of playing RPGs, either paper, tabletop, or single player, or people, trying it for the first time because it was a game where you could play with multiple other people. Co-op games tend to be like to four, 1 to 3 extra players. So the idea of playing with like hundreds of people, in a game that you know, hundreds of thousands of people and possibly even millions in Warcraft's case were playing, um, was really hard for people to fathom before that point. And I think a lot of game companies really wanted in on that. So there was two ways they went about it. There was designing with the idea that you were going to have a lot of players, so you had these big open areas that don't feel that great if you don't have the population for them. I'm looking at you, Vanguard Saga of Heroes. Or you had games like um let's see, as Star Wars SWTOR came out in around 2008. I remember the time I was playing Warcraft. I was playing Pirates of the Burning Sea. There was enough there was enough room in the market for um a boat battle-based PvP game. I mostly was like an economy baron in that game, but I used the open ocean PvP to my advantage quite a bit. I'm getting distracted. There was Rift came out around that time, Wildstar, um Tabula Rasa came out for like a year and then then shut down. There was like a lot of MMOs around the same time. I wish I had made some notes for this. Um, and Something that I don't think people took into consideration, Age of Conan came out around that time too. Was While there was a big market, at the time there was still sort of a cap on the market, as in there was more people weren't coming on. Um, there was a limited player base, and if you got players, you weren't guaranteed to keep them because, in my case, my friends, we would go off and play another game at launch together, start a guild, try out together, whatever, and often they would fall off and go back to a different game. Like they would buy an MMO, play it for a couple of months, and in some cases never pick it up again. So there was the initial numbers, but they weren't staying because people were kind of. I saw quite a few people do this, and I did this myself at times. Um, Play the patch where I would cycle through several different MMOs simultaneously because I was spoiled for choice, and come back, check out what's new, regear up my characters, hit the new level cap if there was a raise of one, and then cycle back through multiple ones. Sometimes I would play a couple at once, depending on how much time I had. But there just wasn't the market to have Warcraft keep its numbers, and all these other games have anything close to its level of success. And I honestly thought when a lot of those huge, big budget multi-year games were failing, that that meant the end of new MMOs coming out. Like I started to wonder if we were only going to see the ones that were like finishing up development, but we weren't going to see any new ones. And then Fortnite came out, and I really think that was kind of the jumping off point for the third kind of audience. Because originally you had kind of the old guard of just RPG people, just happy to be sharing the world and experience with their friends, and it's sort of cozy, slower paced. They took it seriously, but they weren't like, it wasn't an esport, if that makes sense. And then you kind of had in between where people were, you know, um, looking for something a bit more exciting, but not quite, not quite as snappy. And then, one second. And then Fortnite was a faster paced game. It was playable on anything. It's not an MMO, it's a battle royale, but I really think the battle royales had a lot to do with the changing of the MMO landscape because it was signaling that the new audience wanted faster paced gameplay. They wanted more temporary rewards. Like I I liked the idea of character progression, the slow gradual progress of a character over time. I liked to grind a rep with the idea that it would never go away and it would be worth something. I didn't like the idea of grinding a new reputation each patch. I liked to slowly get there. Or if I work towards gearing up, I didn't want my gear to be invalidated. And other people just like the feeling of gearing up and are totally fine getting that new big number a few months later in the new patch. So there was definitely like kind of a break point between those two audiences. And then you get Fortnite and Overwatch and Valorant, and you get these little prep, really fast paced multiplayer games. And then there's like, CSGO and like the Call of Duties and of like a lot of like the multiplayer PvP kind of experiences where you're playing with a lot of people but you're not cooperating with them, or if you are, you're like it's a very temporary thing where you're queued up with a random group of people and you're kind of helping each other, and then when it's over it's gone. So like some of that I think, and it's hard to know if it leached in to the more RPG kind of games, or if there was a demand for it. I can't say, but I'm curious. Like there started being more of a demand for dungeon queues where you just go in with a party on a very temporary basis. You don't even really talk to them that much. You've just got a shared objective, and as soon as it's over, you forget each other exist, right? I never enjoyed pickup groups, pugs, because I felt like I couldn't leave at any point. Like I couldn't leave or pause, or so I felt like I had to sit there the duration. And people started being really impatient, where if one person died in an instance, that was it. The group was disbanded because they're like, no, I'm not. To. I'm not willing to do this. I'm not willing to help strangers like through this. I will just find another group in a few minutes. Um, so it started being really cold and impersonal, where it just felt almost like a gear treadmill. Like where no one's having a good time. There's not really the sense of community anymore. You know, it's just people like just head down trying for an objective. And it's not really like a shared experience. It's just a grind. And that's kind of the feeling that I get. Like more people wanted to be alone and just queue up. And, to be fair, joining raid guilds was a big time commitment, and like a lot of even the older audience, just couldn't commit a part-time job amount of time to be in a raiding guild. They can't be there for hours. They can't commit to a schedule because they've got their job, their family, their other interest. They can't put in a part-time job amount of hours just to have a chance of getting a few pieces of gear in a game every couple of weeks. And they started to fall off because um, there's nothing to do. Like Guild Wars 2 is a great game for people that want to be able to play on their own terms. Do multiplayer challenges like world bosses and stuff without being in a group. Rift was similar, where you just auto join a group for like world content, and you can kind of um, progress on your own. Um, Final Fantasy 14 did have the blocks in the main story where you had to stop and group up. And when there was a big rush of players from Warcraft a couple of years ago, when they had a tough harassment moment, right? Um, there was a demand suddenly for the ability to do instances without a party, where it was previously a more social game. It had a smaller population and people were more patient. And they came up with the trust system where you could basically have bots like NPCs go in with you to solo instances that previously took a group. And people were happy about this change, and I was too, because I didn't want to bother anybody. Like I I want to kind of go through when I'm ready, and I want to go at my own pace. And I enjoy group content, but I don't like being on somebody else's schedule. So it was I'm not saying it was an unwelcome change, but it's definitely a change in the kind of people, the kind of expectations of what community is. And in Warcraft now, especially with their WoW token. I don't know how similar it is in other games. I know, like in Lost Ark, you basically can buy gear, and then you use that gear to to run instances with other people that were able to afford the gear. And it's very like a surprising amount of challenge for a MMO. Because not a lot of them had very challenging combat. They had they had challenges you could face together, but typically, like, if you had a group and everybody was paying enough attention, you could take care of most things, right? They're not super challenging games. Um, but yeah, there was definitely a shift. And then oh, sorry. Once they started having like even Guild Wars 2 has the ability to just buy gold with gems and exchange it. So but they don't have a big GDKP um community the way that like Warcraft does, where you can basically just pay people to guarantee that you're going to get a drop out of an instance. Um and that must be fulfilling for some people, the idea of just having the thing, because they don't have time to commit to um, running it regularly with like a guild or a group that they know until they get it. But I do feel like there's definitely kind of a shift towards kind of you're in it on your own, and you have your own goals, and other people are just like an inconvenience to between you and the actual goal. Like there just doesn't seem to be the same sense of community and socialization that some of the older games had. And I think that there was like a lot of elements in the older games that made it easier to have that, like slower paced combat. Star Wars Galaxy had had wounds. They had like health action and mine your handbar, and you could get mind wounds, and you would have to or you could get wounds where you would have to go and find like a doctor or a medic. There was like a camp you could set up and have your and get healed that way, or you would have to go back to a cantina and watch an entertainer until you healed like a mind wound. And it was probably um annoying, but it was a mechanic that kind of sent you back in to like just take some time and socialize, because like, hey, while you're watching an entertainer, why don't you talk to your friends about like where you just went or what you're gonna do next. There was like all these little quiet moments kind of built into the game, like unreliable fast travel. There was um there was starships that you used to go between planets, and you had to buy a ticket for them. And some of the older games had boats where you had to buy a ticket. And then Lineage 2, I think, had the boats. I'm trying to remember. It's been a long time. Um, you bought a ticket and you stood around waiting until it was time to take your ship and go somewhere else. And that was really inconvenient, right? It wasted a lot of time. But what are you gonna do if you know you gotta stick around for like 10, 15 minutes? You're Other people are gonna come and they're gonna be waiting too, and conversation just happens. Even Final Fantasy 14, they have ocean fishing boats, which I think are a lot of fun. You go off and go fishing with like a boatload of people temporarily, and they run, I think, once an hour. Again, it's been a little while since I played. And I remember, I would be standing on the dock waiting for the ocean fishing boat, and um, new people would come up and say hi when they were waiting too. We were playing at the same time. We liked fishing, and it was a good start for a conversation. And having little inconveniences like that did create moments of just organic, emergent gameplay. The way that like modern, more convenient, more teleporty kind of stuff, has gotten rid of. Um, it's hard to say if that is a positive or a negative, because again, especially now, I don't like having my time wasted. So, like, it's hard to say, oh, I want my time wasted. But, there's been plenty of times in games where I was waiting around for something, waiting around for a holiday event to spawn, to restart, or waiting around, um, you know, um, just talking to people at a bank, or at the exit of a flight path or something like that. There were just these moments where you could just kind of bump into people, and not everybody was like in a rush, um, and people, for whatever reason, were more friendly. Um, so there's 2 MMOs that I'm keeping a watch on that are, like, up and coming, where I feel like, they capture kind of the old MMO essence, but they have some modern sensibilities, and I'm curious, like, where that's gonna land with success for them. The 2 of them are PAX Day, which has some really, really impressive building. So, uh that's kind of why I'm thinking that that one might do well, because I found that games like MMOs that had player housing, you typically got to know people that had a player house near you, because you would end up seeing the same people like multiple times. And it's really cool that you can group together with a guild to build big structures, because some games do have just a pre-made guild hall that you can unlock a bunch of stuff in, but sometimes like those feel like, okay, so I'm just in a capital city with less stuff and less people. If I feel like on some level it's kind of like IKEA furniture where you have to assemble it yourself to so that you have some sort of investment in it, because like that's kind of what sets it apart from like different crappy furniture, like that you know putting the work in and coordinating with people and knowing that like you you gathered the clay and chopped the wood to build this guild hall together makes everybody feel a bit more invested in it, and it's really impressive for like new players to come across like these big structures that took a long time to build, and they would want to join and be a part of the people that were able to accomplish that and see what they could do to help in the future. So that's one reason that I'm kind of excited about that one and anxious to see how it's going to go over. And the other one is Ashes of Creation because it has a lot of elements from previous games. The what is it, Steven guy? He has played many of the MMOs that I've discussed earlier, and he I don't know the backstory completely, but from what I understand, the MMO he was playing um changed for the worse, and he decided that he would wanted to make one on his own that had kind of the essences that he enjoyed from previous ones that he played. Like I know Lineage was one of them, but I can't remember right now what the other one was is. I'm sure that I'm sure it'll come to me after I'm not trying to think of it anymore. But I'm really excited. I've been following the progress of that one for a while. Um it has like a node system where there's going to be little player towns and you know little player houses have like kind of an outdoor area, so you've got kind of like a farm and like a stable, and you can put your mounts um and leave them around, and I know like a lot of people have asked for that in other games with housing. um I don't think that that will make or break a game, but I do think that that's a good element for a sense of community. Like having some sort of permanence for your character in the world. Like going, no, that's where my character lives. Like, it I think that there's definitely more elements to it, but I do think that that is going to pull in some of the people who have just completely bounced off of playing MMOs. And I'm genuinely curious for like the newer audience who plays more fast-paced, don't bother getting to know anybody kind of games, like if they would be interested to come into slower paced RPGs or not. Like yeah, I'm genuinely curious to see how things are gonna go. I don't I think that, like, there's definitely room for MMOs, even new ones, but I don't think it's ever gonna be the same level of success that Warcraft was able to achieve by appealing to so many different types of people simultaneously. Like, even them now, they have 2 separate versions of the game that they're trying to maintain, and even with classic, it's forked off into different types of classic because even those players don't all want the same thing. So, what are your thoughts? Um, I really want to talk on this more, but this one's getting a bit long, so I'll probably revisit this topic soon. It's kind of interesting. Take care.